Greetings, friends. Your cartoonist pal Stan here with a brand new episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon. Work in progress. This is the show where on Wednesdays, most of the time, I have a guest on to have a conversation about the tabletop gaming industry, focused on tabletop role-playing games, which has reached the role-playing aspect of it has reached its 50th anniversary. Tabletop board games certainly older than that, but the broad hobby version round about the 50. I'm going to call it. I mean, it's certainly older, but dedicated hobby stuff. We're still talking about the half-century area. Anyway, I have guests on, and we talk about what's gone on, how they got into the industry, what they're doing, different aspects of what's going on in the industry and as professionals and as hobbyists. And while we're doing that, I often am drawing a cartoon homage to a classic piece of gaming art. Work in progress episodes, like this one, are where I don't necessarily have a guest. In fact, tonight, I don't have one at all. It's just going to be me chatting and rambling, hopefully answering questions that y'all pose in the live chat room. As I work on completing or making progress on one of the drawings I began during one of the interviews. During the interview phases, I usually will finish with a pencil sketch of the piece of art in question, and then when I can, I work on it in my off hours, and I finish it up. You know what? Here's an interesting time to bring it up early in the show, and then when I finish it up, I show it to folks who are subscribers to this show's free newsletter, which you can find at 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com. And, you know, among other things I do there, the people who subscribe get to see the finished pieces earliest. In fact, subscribers also get to see I send out a JPEG, a file of the pencil sketch when it's done. This week I sent out to subscribers, I think on Monday, a copy of the drawing I did during last week's show in the state of development it was when the show wrapped up. And as I make progress, you'll get to see those too. So it's a good place to get a behind-the-scenes look and a chance to take the file in your hands and hang out with it, have a look at it whenever you like. I don't know, hang it on the wall and throw darts at it for all I care. Whatever makes you happy. Yes, so tonight I'll be working on my drawing of the what's it? It's a Jeff Easley. I think it's a Jeff Easley piece from the cover of the classic Dragonlance adventure from the first series of Dragonlance adventure modules, DL8 Dragons of War. And that'll be fun. Hello, folks in the chat. Hello, Michael and Dale and Dreg. Dreg? D-R-E? Dreg? Hi. Hi, Dreg. Welcome. Yes. So, if there's anything you guys want me to chat about, let me know. Any questions or comments or topics of the news that you want to hear? Jeff Easley is a good choice as Dreg. Yeah, you know, I've done a bunch of Easley pieces over the course of this show. I've done 70. This is the 74th drawing that I've done for the show, and Easley is one of the most often represented artists. Of course, he's done classic pieces of D&D art going back to the earliest first edition, and although I don't think he's done anything for Wizards recently, but he certainly is still producing wonderful pieces of art and a lot of things that are very worth having a go at in my particular cartoony style. Has he ever seen them? Asked Michael. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to Jeff in a while. Um, it's entirely possible. Uh, I haven't heard from him directly, which fair enough. I think I always worry that when I'll hear from an artist directly is when they say, "What are you doing?" Although I've occasionally heard from some artists saying that they appreciate the cartoon homages I've done, um, but I've not heard from Jeff directly, and I haven't talked to him in a while. Uh, sorry, I'm looking here. Speaking of Greb, anyone know who did the AD&D first edition Drelb? Which book was that? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not. I'm. You say that, and I'm like, I don't. I'm not sure I know what monster a Drelb is. Hello, Matthew Snow. Welcome, welcome. Oh, there's something. There's a hair hanging on. It's either on my face or on my glasses. I only notice it when I put on my glasses. There we go. That's better. Yes, so that's what tonight's show is going to be. It's going to be me drawing and chatting. But since Dreg has said it, let's see if I can figure out an answer to that Drelb question. Drelb? Drelb. Oh, goodness. That first edition Drelb? Ooh, I have no idea who did that. I'm looking at it. It's a weird wraith-like creature. Yeah, I don't know who drew that. I know that from conversations I've had with people like Steve Sullivan uh, on this show, another one of the early D&D artists, that products like the Monster Manual, the early AD&D Monster Manuals, and such, certainly in things like the deities and demigods, uh, the way the way the art assignments got handed out was, here, do a bunch of them, and when you finish, we'll see where the next person has finished up to, and you'll start there and do the next bunch of them. So I would look at who did the other drawings around Drelb and see if you can figure out who that artist is. And the chances are, if it's the same one before and the same one after, then that's probably the person that did the Drelb too. Anyway, let's see what's going on. I'm going to grab I do all my drawing on an iPad Pro, with the app Procreate, and an Apple Pencil. I do not get sponsored by them. There is no sponsorship. I just tell you that because folks ask how I do my drawing, and that's it. So let's see. I'm going to pull up here and open the file. Here is where we got at the end of the drawing session where I did this. Of course, over in the corner on the left here, we see the reference of the original art. That's Parkinson? Oh, it's a Parkinson, not an Easley. Should have known. Yeah, that's a Parkinson. So it's a Keith Parkinson's drawing from DL8. But, always happy to say nice things about Jeff Easley in any case, even when I'm not drawing his art per se. So that's what the original piece looked like. And here, of course, on the right is my cartoony interpretation of it, or where it stood in the pencil stage. Now, see, there's different colors there. I do my drawing on different layers. In this case, I'm doing the dragon rider, the dragon lord, and Sturm, and that parapet in the foreground as one layer, and the keep, or the part of the High Clerist's Tower, and on another layer, and then there'll be a third layer, which will be the background colors. Michael says, you lied. No, I didn't lie. I was just wrong. That'll happen. So we see here, we've got right now 2 layers turned on. The background layer, as you can see, was all that backgroundy stuff. And the foreground layer, all one layer, is that. If I turn that off, you can see the background layer was the background, as I say, the structure and the explosion. And there will be multiple layers. So the way I do the drawings, those of you who've watched know this already, the way I do the drawings is these are sketches. For the finished drawing, I will do a layer of an inked line, a cartoon, a finished line drawing for each layer. And then for each layer, there will also be at least 2 color layers underneath it. But here for this show, the emphasis is going to be on trying to finish the line work for this one. Still working on the Drobe question. It may have been Harry Quinn. May have been. Could have been. I don't know. All right, so I'm going to go here. I'm going to start a new layer. Make sure the right color. I'm going to close that for a second. Why did I close that? Well, I closed that because sometimes when I'm working, the touch pattern, it's a touch screen, of course, it's on an iPad. Touch has an undo, a touch-related undo, which if I hover my hand around the board too much, will sometimes trigger inadvertently. And that sometimes will lead me to drawing on the wrong layer, which is not good. But it will not undo past the most recent time you closed and opened the image. This is a feature, shall we say, of Procreate. So to make sure that I don't undo this layer I just added, I closed and opened the file. Just a little drawing trick, I tell you. Will I be inking those tonight or doing the background? I will be inking tonight. And I suppose if I do the inking quickly enough, not likely, I will go on to do some coloring. I'm going to start with the inking. I start with a line drawing. So suppose if I open a different drawing, I can show you that, those who may know. Here, so speaking of Jeff Easley, the last finished piece I did was this from the second, the updated original Player's Handbook, first edition AD&D Player's Handbook. So I'm going to turn off the reference at this point, and you can see that. So when I finished drawing, let's turn off the background. What do we got here? Oh, that's some special effects and some other special effects. And so right now, if I turn off that and that, you can see that's kind of the stage we're at now with that other drawing, right? Here is the pencils, just the pencils. And then when I came in, the next thing I did was do the ink. So I drew the inks on there. This, of course, is a drawing that didn't have a lot of, in the way of background detail, so it was all on one layer. Then I put in flat colors for each of the characters. And then I put in highlights, shading, and highlight colors. And then I added in special effects. Or, well, I guess that's the background. But then I added in this special effects. So, like, I put in those around the guy. You see the little imp in the background. His special effects go on there, and the special effects around the wizard's spells went on there. And the background went in there. Different layers, lay it all together, and that's what we get. I think that's all of it. Yeah. I'll turn off that, and we wind up with a finished piece that looks like that. So in the end, hopefully, this Dragonlance, Dragons of War one, will turn into a nice little finished cartoon homage also. Michael in chat says he almost bought another player's handbook just for that cover. You know, a lot of people I know that did wind up buying it just because we're really hard on our cover as gamers. We make a lot of reference to our reference books, and even the most well printed book only stands up to so much opening and closing and being laid flat and flipped over and used at the table. And it's not uncommon after a few years for you to just have put enough wear and tear on your book to want to get a new one. So when a new version, a new printing comes out with a new cover, it's a very tempting to get a new one and save your old book. And one of the things that, of course, as a company, I'm not sure what. I have to put a couple of lines out and see if this is the thickness that I want this to be for this drawing. I think so. So one of the things about being in the publishing industry is that you make more money on a book that you sell over and over. If you don't have to do any changes and just order, you can either order a large print run, and hopefully that's what you do. Most publishers, when they go to press, or most game publishers when they go to press, what they're doing in setting their print runs is to try and get probably 2 years of sales in one print run, because the cost of printing drops the more books you print. Of course, you need to be able to afford that. You know, it's tough business-wise to spend money now and not make it up again until 2 years from now. Business is difficult. Business isn't easy. But Wizards certainly, at any rate, TSR and Wizards, in all the time that I interacted with them, would try to estimate how many books they would sell over the course of 2 years and try to make their initial print run about that big. So that would get the cost of the individual books down as low as possible, and still be a number that they were pretty sure they would recoup over the next 2 fiscal years. And then the question becomes one, when you sell out of those, the question becomes, do you just print the same thing again? Or do you do some kind of change or revision and print something which is mostly the same, but essentially a new product? And the challenge there, the business challenge, the thing that the money people and the sales department have to consider is, how many books are they likely to sell over the next 2 years? And how would making a change, like putting on a new cover, or making revisions to the inside of the book, how will that affect the sales? Because if you're just planning on, because the higher the number of books you order, the cheaper the cost per book to you, and so the better profit you get per sale. But you still need to be able to sell them all. So it's a tough bit of business math you've got to do. Got to figure out, if I put a new picture on it, how many people who would otherwise be happy with the book they have, just keep using the same book over and over, how many of them are going to decide to buy the new version because the new art is just so cool? And does that make it worth? Can you get that sales up high enough to make it worth the cost of printing in that bigger number? And I'll tell you, some of what I'm talking about is certainly, my conversation here is impeded by the fact that I'm drawing while I'm talking about it. Drawing and math, not the best combination for me. But it particularly small and mid-sized companies, when you run out of your book, what you printed the first time around, is you faced with some very difficult decisions, because the price of the book was based on that first print run, when you could print so many, because you knew everyone who wanted it was going to have to buy it. Once you're doing a secondary printing or a reprint of the same book, if your print run isn't as high, then your cost per unit is going to go up. And you might have to consider raising the price of the book, because it's costing you more to print per book. I'm talking very abstractly. Let me throw some actual numbers onto this. So and these are not actual numbers, but hard numbers for discussions purposes. These are not real numbers. These are hypothetical numbers. But let's say, and I'm going to use round numbers too, just to make it easier. But let's say that when they first print the player's handbook, they're going to print 100,000, which is, they will print more than 100,000. Again, they're trying to make 2 or 3 years worth of content, of a print run, so that they can get the price down as low as possible. So they think that they can sell, over the course of 2 years, 100,000 units. And so they can get a certain price. At 100,000, they get a break on the printing cost, and so the cost of the books drops down. Let's say to print the books would be $5 a book, but if they print 100,000 of them, it's only $3 a book. So the price is going to be $20. These certainly sounded like mid-'80s game products rather than average game products today, right? $20. No one's making a hardcover core book for $20 anymore. Anyway, they print all those and they need to print more. Well, the next time they print it, if they don't think they're going to sell as many, say everyone's really happy with it, but no one's having any problems with their first printing wearing out. Well, now when they print them, say they think for the next 2 years they only need 50,000. They're going to sell half as many because it's not a new product anymore. People who want it, they're not growing. Well, those books are going to cost $5 a pop and not $3 a pop. So when they sell them, they are going to make less money. And because they think they're only going to sell 50,000 over that 2 years period, they're going to sell fewer numbers at a lower profitability. So, all of that is to say, when it comes time to do the reprint, they try to think of ways that will get more people to buy them. Now, doing a revision to what's in there, including new, including fixes to errata, or including some kind of new material, will always increase the number of people who will buy it. But it also increases unhappiness in the customer, saying, well, I don't want to buy a new player's handbook. I've got mine. Why do you make me, if I want these new rules, why don't you give me a whole book of new stuff instead of making me re-buy the same product? It's a really tough business case. And all of this really is to say that there are people who look at this and think that it's a money grab, right? They're just trying to squeeze extra money out of their fans. And there is an amount that's true. But what a lot of people don't think about is that it's also trying to make it so that they can afford to keep their product the same price it was. And keep it in stock at the same price for new fans, new people who are coming along and just finding the books now. And so you have things like this, like what we were talking about before with a new cover art, the Easley cover for that second version of the Player's Handbook. And other things went into that too, right? They certainly had done several printings of that the original Player's Handbook, with the Sutherland art of the big idol and the lizard man. I think they did 12 or 13 or maybe even more printings of that book. But they did the new version, and it had updates. It certainly had more pages. It had, the art was more reflective of what the D&D art was becoming, and it just looked better on the modern bookshelf. almost, was it 82 when that happened? I think it was 82. So that is 7 years after the launch of D&D and 5 years after the first Player's Handbook. And as Michael was indicating, like, he certainly was among the people who didn't need one and was tempted to get a new one because it had the new art. People I were playing with at the time, most of them were more than tempted. There was enough of a difference there. The extra pages, the inclusion of errata, the inclusion of some extra player-facing material that they otherwise had in issues of Dragon and other places, were enough to get them all to buy it. The funny thing for me, one of the great ironies of my career, is that at that point, D&D was not my core game. I didn't own very many first edition products. I certainly did not own that Jeff Easley version of the Player's Handbook. I think I had a copy of the original one, but I was mostly playing Villains and Vigilantes at that point. Let's see. So I've been drawing here. The drawing is continuing, but let's see what's going on in the chat here. Mrs. Parchment-like paper of the older books. Yeah, you could take notes in pencil. Current glossy books, not so much. Yeah, but you know, the other thing, that parchment paper is great. It's also thicker and heavier, and these days more expensive. If you put together one of the 300-page player's handbooks like we have today with that kind of paper, it would be super thick and very heavy, and that would make it cost even more. The slick magazine paper is much thinner and much lighter, but as you point out, much less easy to do things like make notes in and write on in pencil. Do I think they still estimate for 2 years today? I'm certain that they estimate for 2 years. I don't talk to anyone there, but that I can, you know, what I can tell you is they were still thinking that way less than 10 years ago when I was doing work with them as a contractor. They set the print run for what you think you'll sell in 2 years. Now, I have heard people who are in positions to perhaps know that, particularly with the new 2025 editions, they might have actually planned for a shorter period of time, like how many they thought they could sell in just the first calendar year. And I remember asking why that would be, and they gave me some explanations that mostly made sense. But with a company like Wizards, and a product like D&D, where it's a product that is going to sell, it's not a question of will you sell D&D. It's going to sell, and it's going to keep selling. You want to, as long as you're the kind of company that has warehouses and It's not going to, you don't, I'm stepping on my thoughts as I try to say them. And the reason you might not want to buy 2 years worth is that you have to pay for storage and maintenance of these products over that period of time. And that's just another extra part of that weird, well, not weird, but that business calculus you have to do. If the cost of storage is so high that you don't want to do that, you want to get close to having as much as you need on hand for a short amount of time, well, then you'll have to go back and reprint. Or, particularly if it's something that only has a short sales period, like, for example, well, it's just one I'm familiar with. The calendars that I printed for this. I would not try and figure out a 2 years sales for the calendars. A, because there isn't a 2 year sale period for a calendar. And I'm not going to want to store it. It would never be worthwhile if I didn't already have a storage facility to pay to store a 2026 calendar for the few sales I'd get extra going forward. But if you're working in bigger numbers, like certainly Wizards is, and anyone who's doing up to mid-sized companies in gaming, the Green Ronines and the Kobold Presses and the Monty Cook games, right? You're going to have a warehouse because you're doing sales all the time, and you have books that are going to sell over the life of their sales is going to be long enough that you need to have them on available all the time. So yes, that being the case, then when you do your first print run, you want to print as many as you possibly can, knowing that your return on investment is going to take 2 or more years to play out. So you need your first year's profitability to cover that, the cost. But the eventual profitability will roll in over time. Again, I've done this. I've done this with the company. I've done it for myself. It's a weird headspace to have to get into. Anyway, so yes, I do know. Now, I think one of the reasons why you might not want to think that far in advance is if you look at the cost of printing changes over time, just like everything else. And usually it goes up, which is why you want to get your printing in early at the lowest price possible, and then recoup that over time. Because when you come back the next time, it may be impossible to get the print costs to be the same. But there certainly are times and cases, and these last couple of years are among them, where you look at it and you think, you know what, the print costs might actually come down. When we hit the big tariff controversies of last year, it was certainly reasonable to think that the costs that you would incur for printing today might come down over time when the tariff situation is resolved, and it goes back to just being a printing and shipping cost. So maybe you want to print only what you need for the short term, and then hope that when it comes time to print again, the tariff situation or whatever the actual business situation is for your particular case has resolved, and you can reprint at a lower price. It's difficult. Business is full of a lot of... Business is a tough game. All right, let me see what else is going on in here. Some TTRPGs will produce a new core book with a different cover or different sample for... Yeah, you know what? At the end, you wind up sometimes factoring into your decisions the fact that there are people, you have your most dedicated fans who, if you put out a new version of it, will want to have it just because they're your fans and they want to have it. If you hit that button too often, you can burn out your fans on it. You certainly hear the number of people who will complain when a new edition comes out. But then you'll have other people who will celebrate it. Oh, look, new art, new cover, there's some slightly different amount of thing. Call of Cthulhu, as a game, has had many more editions than there have been significant changes in the basic way the game works. Their most recent one is definitely this 7th edition Call of Cthulhu is definitely a change in the way the game works, in that it is actually a new edition, a new version of the game. But through most of the 7 editions, I'd say first edition Cthulhu came out. Second edition was they'd learned a bunch and tweaked it some, but then third and fourth editions of Call of Cthulhu were pretty much the same game with just a few little adjustments. And then 5th edition Call of Cthulhu came out, and there were enough changes that it did feel like a new edition, but it was still, you could still use the same products. You could use your first, second, or third, or fourth edition products in the 5th edition game. But there were definite changes. If you were doing game design, adventure design, for a 5th edition Call of Cthulhu book, you needed to have the 5th edition rules because there were enough differences. 6th edition, again, kind of a tweak more than anything else. 7th edition, definitely a new edition of the game. But Call of Cthulhu players and fans bought each edition when they came out. They were happy to support the game. And even though you're getting a new edition of Call of Cthulhu about every 3 years. Michael says he remembers the AD&D books at 12. Yeah, $12. How about that? And it seemed so expensive when those first hardcovers came out at $12. $12? Who has $12 for a game book? Those were the days. I mean, let me finish going through this before memory. Dreg says his memory is $20. Yeah, well, they went up. Costs went up. Printing costs pretty quickly started to get up there. So it was the original ones were $12 and $15. I think by the time that version that with the Easley cover that I was showing the homage to a little earlier, I think by that time the costs were around $20. I could be wrong about that, but I'm going to talk about that pricing in a second. I just want to finish going through what's going on in the chat right now. What West End games did I work on? All right. Well, there's a different question. We're gonna have to get back to that one. Chris Andrew. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, and Dragonlance painting. We're working on the uh, painting I did episode 70, maybe somewhere around there. Um, I like the call is coming from inside the House Thulu edition. Oh, Troy, you are so droll. Um, Michael says we got a 15% discount at J.C. Penney's on that. Oh wow, back when D&D was sold at J.C. Penney's, you are going back and you're going to the Wayback Machine, my friend. Making my gray hairs feel like they have gray hairs. All right, so this. Before I get to the West End question, before I switch over to the West End questions, let's look at that pricing thing, that $12 versus what you pay today. And, a lot of that is the actual increase in inflation and how much it costs costs of goods and costs of shipping and everything that's changed. You certainly could not put out a 300-page, or let's see, even if we go back to the size of the original D&D Player's Handbook, which I think was only about 128 pages. Someone has one there. Pull it out and see how many pages is in the original D&D Player's Handbook. But even at that, you could not put out a product of that size for $12 anymore. Just the cost of goods won't allow it. It will cost you $5 to $8 to print that. Unless even printing at the economy of scale that Wizards has, it's going to cost you $5. It's going to cost them $5 to print that book. And then that's just the printing. Then the shipping and the storage and the shipping out to the stores, and the fact that when you're selling into stores, you can only get half of the cover price is what they will pay you. So if you've got a $12 book, you're only getting paid $6 for it. So right there, just the cost of goods, they would only be making $1 a book if it was a $12 cover price. I see the numbers up to 127 in the Player's Handbook. Oh, it's got to be 128 just because of the way that. There's a page there that's not counted, at least. So yeah, that's about what it is. So it's $12 for about 128 pages. Well, no core book these days is 128 pages. You got 300-page books. So right away we've got this strange, almost not impossible, but very difficult to define difference. So we're not comparing apples to apples anymore. But one of the things that happened when Wizards bought TSR and we came out and we started working with a new business team, Ryan Dancy's team. One of the theories I remember Ryan bringing into the discussion was how much should a a gamer expect to pay for their hobby? Or how much, let's take it away from gamer, how much do people spend on their hobbies? And there's a lot of research done broadly in that category across a lot of different hobbies, including things like model railroad, knitting, uh, people who like jigsaw puzzles, people who like all different kinds of hobbies. There's a broad industry of that in the U.S., and they've done a lot of research, and it turned out that in the U.S. most people at the time were spending about $100 a month on their hobbies. And that gamers were spending significantly less, and already complained that prices were too high. And the thing that Ryan wanted to do was to begin to try to bring our hobby, the gaming hobby, in line with the way the rest of the U.S. hobby industry work. And that's when he started championing what became that big boost in the cost of products. I don't know if you remember, about 25 years ago, back at the start of 3rd edition, when the prices of the core books went up. They still had been in the 20s, the $20 to $30. It's like $35 if it was a box set. But the hardcover books were still in the 20, maybe not $20, but in the prices were in the 20s. For again, a product that you could buy. One of the big things about D&D has always been that once you buy your core books, you don't actually need to buy anything else for quite a while. If you're going to write your own adventures, you don't need to buy them. And in fact, if you have a game group you're gaming with, not everyone needs to have a copy of the game. You really can have, and a lot of beginning groups do, just one person has the game, the rules. Everyone else is playing using that. Now, the longer you play, the more you want to have your own copy of the games, but you don't need it. So having a product where the basic cost of the game is, at that point, $20 for basically infinite usage for a group of 4 to 8 people. Whereas the average American was spending $100 a month, you could spend $20 once. His theory was that we are underpriced. The game industry is underpriced. And so we had the start of what we currently see is the increase in what game products cost. Now, it hit a ceiling, right? There turns out, not surprisingly, to be the maximum amount that gamers won't pay. Right? It won't go more than that, or not in numbers, not in high enough sales numbers to make it worthwhile. But we now see where a core book is always going to be $40 or $50. Man, and these days, probably, I would say most of them are going to be $60. I think currently it's been a long time since one of the advantages of working in the industry is that I do still, if I'm going to work on a product, I can usually count on uh, the the publisher giving me a copy of the product. So I don't I don't spend. I have many more games than games I have spent money on. But my gut feeling is that if we went and looked, we'd find that the the games that are comparative to D&D core books are closer to $60 a pop these days. Now, I mean, there's a secondary thing that come in. There's also a lot more smaller games which don't have the size and uh, scope of D&D that are out there that cost a lot less than that. And you theoretically could play them just as long. The indie games and the smaller games, the Morkborgs and the um, uh, Shadow Darks. But Shadow Dark, you get the Shadow Dark core book, and that's a $35 or $40. But it's a nice hardcover book. I'm not knocking it in any way. But look at that. We're now at the point where an indie game, if you want to get the core game, is going to cost you $40, $35, $40. So yeah, the bigger ones are going to be $60. And if you're a big fan, there are now fancy schmancy editions that you can get for $120. And that's where another part of the hobby comparison to other industries, right? You can get the most basic version, but if you're a fan, you probably want the fancy schmancy version, and that costs more, and you'll pay it. Why? Because you're a fan, and you identify that way. The Beetle and Grimm stuff. I mean, these are all the things that you know we want, but we can't necessarily afford. We want because they seem cool. They're cool, but they're not necessary. They are for a different audience. They are for the audience that can afford that. It's not a better audience. It's not a different audience in that it's a different game, but it's for the audience. It's for the people that play. All the people that play, people that can play and play fancy. Hello, Alex Thomas. I'm doing well, thank you. Yes, glad you could pop in and say hi. Um, Michael says D&D kept the core books at $50 for the 2024 edition. So yeah, same as in 2014. Yes. Um, they the other thing that even going back to third edition, going back to when they first bumped up the prices, that keeping the core books a little lower. Like you want the barrier to entry, the first books you need to be a bargain, relatively speaking, to what you're going to have to pay for the other books. And also recognizing that there's just a reality, right? Once something costs more than X, in this case, we're going to say $50 because that seems to be that people coming in particular are going to say, I don't know if I want to spend $50 on that. So you got to keep your prices to the point where you can bring your new audience in. Um, Chris says, what do I think hurts the industry more? One, the video game industry's advancements, or two, market saturation with too many product options? What do I think hurts, what do I think hurts the tabletop game industry more? Video game advancements or market saturation? I think they're two different things. I don't think those are not two different things I would want to put head to head. Video game advancements, I think, have historically had their effect on how many new people come into the hobby. How many people decide that this is the main thing they want to do. I don't think saturation of other products affects that that axis of sales of our broader industry. And for a long time, video game advancement was I think a very big draw, a very big suck on the interest that people had in coming to this old style of gaming. Like if they want to get their fantasy, they can go and do it on a computer. I think another part of that, though, I think that issue really began to be overcome with the dawning of the live play video streaming and video replay. I think the computer game version, the computer game had its biggest influence on, one, new people coming into the hobby, and two, people who only had so much time to game. Yes, that for sure. And three, people who lost their current game or their current game group and had to either find a new one or find something new to do with their time. And the advancements in the computer game industry, particularly for that third group, were very strong. And if you didn't have a new game group to play with, video gaming was suddenly a reasonable replacement. The advancement these days of particularly the ability to play online with people and find a game to play has changed dramatically. It's really changed the industry dramatically. And the advancement of live play videos and video replays that teach people how to play, that show people who otherwise wouldn't know what tabletop role-playing is, what the classical role-playing game is always mysterious. Like the hardest thing about getting anyone to join in role-playing back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even aughts, the hardest thing was to, if they didn't have someone they knew who played, to get them to try it, to understand what it was. So many misconceptions, all the nasty comedy bits and misconceptions about the industry were about people not really understanding what the games were. They just seem so weird. And it's only the advent of the actual play videos where people could see the Matt Mercer's group and all these other people sitting down and playing this game and being able to look at it and go, oh, I understand that. That's not so weird. In fact, it looks kind of fun. Um, that has that's what's thrown open the door to this whole new flood of people coming into the hobby, in my opinion. Um, and in as much that that there are games like, as Michael says, Baldur's Gate 3 and other games, that computer games that are like D&D and that have ties through their product line or their setting or the fiction around it, ties back to tabletop games. I think they entice people who play the computer games to want to try something more. Right? The thing about a lot of the computer games, uh, downloadable content notwithstanding, is you make a thing and then you got to wait a long time for more to come out. Now, massively multiplayer instances where you can just keep playing the same thing, go back to the world every day and do stuff. That's a different. Just a different angle too. So this is really a rich and complex ecosystem between between the computer and the live action and the in person and the through video streaming and the watching videos. It's really kind of awesome. And for me as an old person, the old guy who started back in the late '70s, it's really fascinating to see the richness and the depth of role playing. Never could have imagined that back in the day. Let's see. Troy says, "Don't know if video games pull an audience away." But they used to, though, right? They used to. There was a point when video games did pull people away, and one of the things we have to be careful of as we talk about these things is to that we're not answering yesterday's questions, right? I think that really was a very real question and a very real concern in 2002. I think Troy's right. Today, I don't think that question is that question as stated from that perspective is an issue anymore. See, Troy says, with D&D, specifically that brand, people don't often break up with their first love. World of Warcraft is the D&D of TTRPGs. World of Warcraft is the D&D of massively multiplayer onlines. Getting people to move from one game to another is a real challenge. Yeah, I tell you, here, kind of switch that topic. That's a thing that has always been not confusing to me, but just a thing that I've always kind of marveled at. When I started playing, we switched games all the time, and I know most of the people I know in the industry. You got a game going. You want to try a new game. You want to experiment, and research, market research shows that that is not true for most gamers out there. What Troy's saying is true. Most gamers find the game they like, and they want to stick with that game. And if it's D&D, very often it is the first game that they played. D&D, not always, but D&D or Pathfinder or that's why you want to, as a third party. If you can, the more people you can get to start with your game, they'll stick with it. And the age engine, the um, fantasy age or modern age, or the Midgard setting, and the stuff for Kobold Press, or the Cipher system for Monty Cook games. If you can get people to start there, they will become. They will most likely want to stay there. Now let's see. Let me just change the think for a second here. Sorry, I need to take a think about the art for a second break. I'm trying to decide the inking for what line weight I need for the inking in the background, and I think it can be the same. All right, I don't need to think about that anymore. But you do often find there's a subgroup in the world of game hobbyists who want to try lots of different games, and they love the activity of role playing and all different, and they want to explore different ways to do it. And then there are people that want to have an adventure. And they just want to keep coming back and having that adventure or the next chapter of it. And those people most often find a game and stick with it. It is very much like two different, closely related, but different things that people are getting out of the games. And people that want to try all the new indie games and all the new different iterations of how to play role playing. They want to play D&D style games, and they want to play storytelling, narrative heavy games, and they want to play card based games, and they want to play dice based games. Then there's a lot of people, as Troy was talking about, who just want to come and play they want to play the next chapter of the story. They don't want to try something new. They want to have a reliable thing so they can come in and do the thing. And I'm not saying, in no way am I saying that one is better than the other. I'm just saying it's important it's important for me. I don't know if it's important for everyone to recognize that difference, but anyone who wants to have these kind of conversations, I think it is important to recognize that those differences exist. And to remember, as those of us who work in the industry, that you are serving two or more distinct customer bases who want different things. They want parallel things that are very similar in many cases. But the people that aren't interested in trying new stuff are never going to be persuaded by how wonderful the new stuff you have to offer is. They don't want it. The people who do want that are never going to be swayed by the fact that you can give them the new chapter of the reliable thing. Well, they want to explore more than that. Yeah. I think that the piece of that is it's important from a business perspective, from a professional publisher perspective, to remember that your audience is is actually a couple of different audiences that are not exactly the same and have different needs. The stuff you do for one is not necessarily going to appeal to the other. Oh, all right. I see that. I didn't see that clearly. All right. I'm going to come back here for a second. I was misinterpreting what I was seeing in my pencils, which is one of the reasons why I keep the reference open. Is my pencils are not always clear and correct. Anyway, like it says, there have been some interesting works on examining the different types of gamers. Oh boy, over the years there have been a whole bunch of interesting things on types of gamers, and Wizards in particular has done a lot of market research over the years, and I've found it interesting to note that sometimes well, it's not just Wizards. In fact, Michael, you and I had a conversation about this at Page when we were talking about personality typing. That, you know, you got to be sometimes. Well, you have to be aware of the parameters of what you're asking and why you're asking it, and not become so in love with the answer that you don't recognize when um, when those parameters have changed. Like the personality typing has a fits within a certain time frame and situational frame, and the same thing is kind of true with, well, not even kind of, it's certainly true with the personality typing of gamers. The Wizards had, when we got there, had done a lot of personality typing for Magic players, and there was a very strong faction within the company that wanted to apply those directly to role-playing gamers too. And I believed then, and I believe still, that that doesn't apply directly. Doesn't necessarily apply directly. In part because of the differences in the audience. And in part because of the assumptions that you make based on what the game you're testing for is. And in large part because we as humans tend to want to take information we have and over-apply it. Let's see. You would ask a question earlier, Michael, that I said I was going to get back to. I mean, I'm happy going on. As you can see, I could blather on and on about this kind of thing, but I said earlier I was going to talk a little bit. It was something about West End. Remind me again what the question was. You would ask me a question about my time at West End Games. Oh, I guess is while I'm waiting for that, um, this is maybe a good time to mention that I was shown today. There's a new um, there's a new group on Facebook where they are kind of ranking. Certainly, they're giving numerical ranks, so they're definitely ranking uh, game designers, giving uh, a an assessment and a background and a history and a ranking to various game designers. I don't remember the name of the group now. I should probably have looked it up before the show. But I was notified by the guy who is organizing that they have put up uh, put up a piece on me with my history and my an assessment of what I've done and what I'm good at, and um, where my strengths lie and where my uh, position in the history of the game is. Or it's kind of fascinating, and kind of also the type of thing that I am resistant to at the same time. But it's up there. I will try to remember to post it to my Facebook group. And you know what? I will make a post. You know, I was talking earlier about that newsletter for this show. I will make a post about it to the newsletter with a link to where you can see the overall assessment of Stan. Why did that happen? Oh, this is a new version of. It's a new thing that happens in. On the iOS, and I don't remember how I. There we go. Okay, good. Dale says the best tabletop game designers is the page title. There we go. Thank you, Dale. And yes, I think that my so I'm one of the best tabletop game designers, apparently. It's a fascinating page, fascinating read. I of course am flattered to be even considered worth inclusion, worth consideration in a group with that title. Um, and I got to see the piece about me, and um, I was able to look at it and give my feedback. If you saw that, I think it originally got posted a couple of days ago. If you saw it a couple of days ago, there were some factual errors in it that I pointed out to the folks doing it, and they have since gone back and corrected those factual errors. Um, there certainly, reading it, you know what, I would not say that uh, I'm a bashful person. I certainly have a good idea of things I am good at, things that I could improve on. But I've done some things over the past 30 plus years in the industry. I have done things, and I have done things that make me worthy of being remembered to a greater or lesser extent. um, I'm not always comfortable accepting compliments immediately off the cuff, but I do accept it. I've done things that deserve being complimented for. Still, there are definitely things in the way this was written that I look at and I'm like, wow. I mean, I wouldn't say that about myself, but okay, you can. And then other things I'm like, hey, I'm so glad that you think that or that you notice that. Um, the thing I find most fascinating that this page, these write-ups, basically try to sum up someone's career and history and give them a place, right? A thing that they do, besides being a ranking of particular skills, just I don't know, what the word I'm looking for is a role that they fulfilled. And my role that they decided I fulfill is I am the bridge builder. That the one of the things that defines my career and the things that I've managed to accomplish is making products and games that that create an opening for new people to come into the game industry, to come into the hobby, and to come in and try new things. Here's a bridge in, and they make they make a pretty good case for it. I'm happy to be the bridge builder. But it's an interesting read. Michael, I'm still wondering what that West End question is, because if you don't want to go there, we'll just go back to the previous conversation, and that's okay too. What was I going to say? Yeah, but so while I appreciate and am honored by being considered for this thing, there certainly were parts of, let's say, there were things in the original write-up that were not accurate, and then there were also things that that they were neither. So I corrected the things that were factual, that were points of fact that could either be true or not true. The write-up says this, factually that did not happen, blah, blah, blah. There are other points where the write-up kind of goes off on a interpretation or a perspective or a assessment of what I've done. Those I didn't touch at all. I figure those are up to other people to say. I did not agree with some of them, like some of the interpretations of what I did or what my skills were or things like that, or where I fit in or what other people think of it. I didn't have anything to say about those because those are the writer's opinions, and they are more than welcome to have them. And it honestly doesn't matter. I think it's true. It doesn't matter what I think about that. You say about when a writer writes something, their intention for it is essentially and eventually less important than what the audience thinks. It's not yours. After you've written it, it's not yours. It belongs to the people who read it and use it. And I think the same is true about any public figure's relation with the audience that they serve. I think what I want to think, and I try and do a certain thing, but in the end, whether or not I did that and whether or not that's important are secondary to what the audience makes of what I did and how they remember it. Oh, okay. So the question is, what did I do at West End? Okay, well, that's a factual question. I can answer that pretty easily. So, I got hired at West End to be a graphic artist, graphic designer. I applied to West End to be an editor. So back in 1993 and 94, a friend of mine, Ed Stark, who's been a guest on this show a number of times, was working at West. So I guess even earlier than that. Back in 1988, early 1989, Ed started working at West End Games, and he and I knew each other. We were in the same gaming and hanging out group, and he got a job at West End Games. And he came to us and said, hey, the thing about West End Games is they need freelancers. They have all kinds of stuff they need done. And I can tell you when there is a project that's open for submissions by new people. And we're always looking for new people. So we got a lot of these small adventure things to write or articles, and you can get a chance to get into the game industry too. And we all said great. And various people in the group did different projects. Some were successful, some were not. Some were successful once and decided they didn't want to do it again. And some people got more assignments. I started doing stuff from there. But at that time, I also then, that's when I took a job teaching English in Japan. And I left for Japan, having just finished my first, I think I'd written an article for the Infiniverse. Maybe not. Maybe I wrote an article for Infiniverse, but I wrote a short story for a Torg anthology. I was talking about more projects, but I got this job teaching English, and I left for Japan. Ted and I remained close. Ed and I remained close, and I stayed in communications, and I think I may have done a couple of other small things for them. While I was in Japan, I certainly sent, in communication with Ed and the group, and I sent them things from Japan, and I kept talking to Ed about the possibility of eventually doing more work for them and maybe even coming on staff. There were other people in the group who did wind up coming on staff at West End Games. Bill Omsdahl is the biggest, most successful, or is the most successful, that he wound up coming on staff at West End as a sales rep and eventually moved over into editorial. I was interested in doing editorial. Writing was my thing. I thought I was pretty good at it, and but I was teaching English, and so it got to the point where I was beginning to realize it was time for me to come back from Japan. If I could, I either was going to stay in Japan long term, or it was time for me to come back and get a job in the States. And Ed told me about an editorial position that was open at West End, and I applied for it and didn't get it. I was one of the top candidates. And then, very close to the end of the process, someone who was much more qualified than I was. This was for when they were launching the Star Wars Adventure Journal. I was going to be the original editor for the Star Wars Adventure Journal. I was up for that job, and I was a leading candidate for quite a long while. But very close to the end of that process, a guy named Pete Schweighofer sent his resume in. He had a lot of experience working in periodicals, in publishing, in news publishing, and periodical publishing, and he was absolutely a better choice than me. He's the kind of guy that they would have hoped to get, like that, but figured no one with that kind of experience would apply. But Pete was a Star Wars guy who was looking to get out of journalism, and so he did apply. And they let me know, well, sorry, Stan, but we got this Pete guy. But we still love you, and we'd like to. The next time we got an opening, we want to bring you in. And again, I think they made absolutely the right call there. So then another position opened up, editing position opened up, and I was the leading candidate for it. Upon it being announced, it was like, okay, this is the job that we'll probably hire Stan for, but we got to put it open and see who else applies and interview them. And they got an interview from a young woman named Miranda Horner, whose name you may recall because she did eventually she got hired for that and got hired at TSR and at Wizards of the Coast, and she's currently at Elder Scrolls Online. Miranda's great. And so I was the leading candidate, and then the heads of the company, or the people involved in the hiring, they had an interview with her, and she did a fantastic interview. They'd never had an interview with me. They knew me because I'd done several things, but I was in Japan. I couldn't come in for an interview, and they decided in the end, they were going to hire Miranda. She had a great interview. I was only a mostly known subject. She'd been there. Again, I can't argue it. Miranda is great hire. So the next time I was home on a vacation, I went in and did an interview with them ahead of time, so that the next time that something opened up, I would have been interviewed and I wouldn't be just a name on a piece of paper. But they didn't have a new editorial position open up. But they did have a graphic design position. And one of the things I was doing in Japan, so I'm trying to look at this and decide how I want to do. I think I want this explosion. All right. Pause in the story as I explain to you what I'm thinking about here. So right now we've got we've got the building and the shrapnel and the explosion all on one layer, and I don't think I want that to be the case. I think I want to take this shrapnel. I'm going to grab the shrapnel. Alright, I'm on the right layer. I'm on the correct layer. I'm going to grab the shrapnel, and I'm going to move it to its own layer. I'm going to cut it and paste it into its own layer. I'm going to name that layer shrapnel so I remember what it is. Very often I'll go back. Well, in fact, very often I don't go in and rename the layers. I just assume I know what they are. But in this case, I'm going to have a shrapnel layer and I'm going to have an explosion layer. Anyway, so in Japan, I had been running a gaming network, a gamers network, and for that, I had been publishing a newsletter, a quarterly newsletter, bi-monthly newsletter, I think, and I'd been sending that back to Ed and several other friends back there, and he had shown the people at West End the newsletter. And based on that newsletter, they said to me, look, we don't know when we're going to have another editorial position open up, but we have a graphic design position open up, and based on the work that you're doing on your newsletter, you're qualified, and we've already interviewed you, and we'd like to hire you. We'd like to offer you a job as a graphic designer, with the understanding that the next time we have an editorial opening, we will move you over to that. But that's not going to come for a while. We're telling you right now, we're not going to be hiring more editors again for a very long time. And so, my first job at West End was to be an assistant art director, associate art director, which basically meant I was doing layout and graphic design, designing maps and other the artists. Well, I would work with freelance artists, but it wasn't doing the illustration. It was doing the other bits of graphic design. And so I came on and I did that. And I'll tell you the truth is I really wasn't that good at it. I was passable, but the fact of the matter is that in northern Pennsylvania, where West End was based, they couldn't find enough qualified graphic designers. So they were happy to get someone who knew what they were doing. And no one ever treated me as a junior member of the team, but I really was doing the letting other people take the lead, and I was doing the follow-up work. mostly. I did not do page layout, or I did not do page design. I did layout of the page design. I did not. I did some map design. They were in fact happy to let me do that, but I also knew that the really fancy maps I let other people do. In fact, I often would ask them to do it because they did it better than I was. It just was not a thing that I really excelled at. My but I did get the chance to do illustration in a couple of instances. I did a hand-drawn map for the World of Tank Girl role-playing game. And I got to do about a third of the art for the Paranoia, the 5th edition, which was actually the 3rd edition of the game, but that's a different story. And so, I did a lot of illustration for that book. So that's what I did. I did the layout for a lot of issues. Interestingly, for 4 or 5 issues of the Star Wars Adventure Journal, which in a different universe I would have been the editor of. So I did a lot of work for and with Pete Schweighofer for the Adventure Journal. I did page layout and map design for some Indiana Jones games. I wrote some products freelance. I wrote the DM's product for the World of Tales from the Crypt. I wrote the final product for Shatterzone. I wrote a part of an adventure book for Blood Shadows. And all the while, there actually were a couple of editorial positions that opened up. And every time they opened up, they gave them to someone who wasn't me. For a couple of reasons. One was that as I say, it was easier to find editorial candidates than graphics candidates. And the other was that Ed had left for TSR, and Bill followed after him. And they were convinced that I was going to leave anytime, that Ed was going to find a job for me there, the way he had found a job for me at West End. And so they didn't want to give me a job that I was then going to leave them for. And they'd have to fill it again. And the ironic part about that is that Ed did try to get me a job at TSR very shortly after he got there. And I did not get it. And so I knew I wasn't leaving, and they weren't moving me to where I wanted to be. And I was not happy doing graphic design. So I actually had been thinking about getting out of the industry. I was starting to explore getting into teaching full time. And then TSR did have an opening and made me a job offer, and off I went! La la la! And then the rest is history. Did I ever get my cold revenge on Pete? Now, you know what? I never wanted any revenge on Pete. Turns out looking at what the Star Wars Adventure Journal was, not only was he a better fit to start with, he was better suited to that job anyway. Would have been interesting. Steve Miller eventually took over from Pete when he left, and he did that job for a while. It would have been fun. It would have been great, but that was as much a managing freelancers in the world of freelance writers from the New York publishing world, as opposed to freelance writers from the game industry world. And I think that I'm happy that opportunity didn't land squarely in my lap. I think Pete was a better choice to begin with, and he did a better job than I would have on it. Chris says, unbeknownst to most, that explosion was caused by a burst pipe. You should never go with galvanized steel plumbing in your miles-high towers. Good advice. Good advice. Hello, Agile Monk. Thank you for joining us. I have now completed... Well, I mean, it's really confusing when you lay all those levels on top of each other. It's at full strength. But I will be dropping, as I color them, I will be dropping the... changing the shade. So kind of like, let me turn these off and go back to the pencils. Right, so we can easily see, since I did different colors. When I do the finished versions, the pencils on the structure are going to be probably a tannish color, maybe a blue, maybe a blue, so it'll drop back. And certainly the explosion is going to be an orange or a yellow of some sort. But right now they're all black, and so they just sit on top of each other, competing for your eye's attention. It just looks so confusing. Anyway, yes. So that's my West End story. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, I'm caught up with the chat. How about that? All right. So we're here. It's been about 2 hours. I know very often these work in process videos go longer than that, but I actually have some writing I need to do tonight. So I think I'm going to wrap up this show right here. I don't know. Next week is also going to be a studio week, and I don't know if I'm going to be I don't know if I'm going to be continuing this. I might do something which is not technically 50 years in the dungeon. I've got another project that I need to do some art on. I might just have a stand studio night. I don't know. But next week will be a studio night one way or another. I hope you can come back and join that. I've been having a good time chatting. I've been having a good time drawing. I hope you all have enjoyed this. Yeah. Let's see what else. So talking about the, I'll try and find a link to the best tabletop game designers page on Facebook. You can look that up yourself. Best tabletop game designers page, where there's a write-up of me and a lot of other really interesting people. I know Jeff Grubb was telling me at lunch today that they've got a write-up for him, whether that's live now or he got his review, and it's going to go up soon. Keep an eye out for that. Yeah, I don't know that I have any other big. Probably should have. Oh, you know what? Here, I got something to show. I'm gonna let's share with you folks. Here's what I got this in today from my editor. One of the things I do besides game design and cartooning is that I am a rewriter for Viz Media as a freelancer. I work on manga. I'm not a translator. I work with a translator who creates a literal translation of the book, and I take that from Japanese into English. I take that literal English translation and I rewrite it so that it's more. This is going to sound like a knock on the translator. More entertaining. More because I'm a writer. I kind of change not the meaning but the expression of things and where they fit and how they work, and make sure that the sound effects feel right for English. Anyway, I've worked on a lot of lines over the last 20 years for Viz. One of the books that I've worked on is a book called Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt. And I just got my contributor copy for volume 25, which is going to be coming out sometime soon. If I got it, I think it's coming out in a month or two. It'll be on store shelves. I've been the rewriter for the entire series of Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt. This is volume 25. I'm currently working on volume 27, which I don't think it's at all a surprise because it's out in Japan, is the final volume in the series. So volume 25 coming out soon. I'm working on volume 27 very, very soon, and it'll be drawn to a close. It's a really, really great series. I've worked on a lot of fun series, a lot of a few that I didn't personally care for, but I did my best job on. They weren't my kind of products. Gundam, I'm so happy to have been able to work on Gundam and to be part of this, and to be able to have been the writer for the entire series. If you like Gundam, if you like giant mechs in space, check out this series. They say there are 24 volumes out in the world right now, probably available at your local library. You want to check one out. It has been a really great series, a lot of fun to work on. So, say volume 25 coming out soon. Previous 24 volumes out there in the wild for you to find. Anything else coming up big? Tomorrow night, I'll be back with a new episode of Random Encounters, and it's going to be a Winter Olympics themed show. That'll be fun. Last week on the Random Encounters, I wound up doing a snowboarding drawing. It was roper snowboarding, and I drew a roper and a Zorn doing their snowboarding, and it was fun. And I decided that I was going to do a what's the word I'm looking for? A theme show for this. And usually on the show, I roll randomly for the who's and the what's, the creature that I'm going to be drawing and what they're going to be doing. This week, I've decided that they're all going to be, the Roper and the Zorn are my Olympic mascots. So tomorrow, when we do the show, we're going to have the Roper and the Zorn are going to be doing all the stuff, and they're all going to be Winter Olympic events. We're going to randomly roll for Winter Olympic events, and the Roper and the Zorn are going to be participating in the Winter Olympic events. Chris has an Etten as a figure skating pair. That's funny. Not going to happen, though. It's just going to be the Roper and the Zorn. Everything's Roper and Zorn. All right. That's enough. Thank you all for joining me tonight. I've had a very good time, as always, hanging out and chatting. Do me a favor. If you've made it to this point, please give this episode a thumbs up. Give it a like or a heart or whatever it is on the platform you're watching. That is very helpful to me. It gets my channel and my programs shown to people who haven't seen them yet. Hopefully they can join us and be part of the great community that we have going on here. Also, as I said before, we got the free newsletter, 50 Years in the Dungeon.substack.com, where you can go to be the first to see the finished art. Also, I'm not sure that this inked version is, let's say, it's really confusing when it's just lines laid on top of lines. I'm not sure that I'll be updating that, but maybe I'll send it around. You guys can see it. And, of course, all the insights, all the new stuff, it's totally free. Go check it out. If you're a fan of what I do and you want to be part of my community, if you want to be one of my 1,000 true fans, then you may want to join my Patreon community. We've got a patreon.com/StanX. And also you get more behind-the-scenes stuff, depending on what level you pledge at in Patreon. You get other nice little gifts from me, extras that other people don't get, including at one level at least, you get stickers sent to you several times a year. Stickers of my drawings. I'm looking at the Roper and Zorn and thinking they might make a nice sticker. I'm not sure, but maybe. So yes, patreon.com/StanX. Please check it out. Tell your friends. Oh God, maybe I should talk about 1,000 true fans sometime. If you're not familiar with the 1,000 true fans theory, I'm a big believer in it. I'll tell you about it sometime. Other than that, though, I'm done for tonight. I say I've got some writing I've got to go do. So thank you again. Thank you to everyone who was watching. Thank you to everyone who stopped by and said hi in the chat. Michael in chat, Matthew Snow, Perry Caldwell, hey, good to see you. Dale, and we got Agile Monk was here, and Troy was here, and Injun Joe was here. So many folks. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate seeing you. I will be back tomorrow night, same channel, same time, for an episode of Random Encounters. Until then, night everyone. Take care. Bye.